Hi, everyone. It's Lynn Boutier from lynnboutier.com. I'm a certified trauma recovery coach, and this is episode number 56 of my ongoing series entitled Monogamous at 13. This is today going to be an episode that can be triggering for some of my viewers, because today is the episode where I begin to talk about the sexual abuse that I experienced and how it happened. And so before I say anything to you at all today, I would like very much to express to you how important it is for you and myself to be in a state of anchored and groundedness for the entire time that we're doing this work together. And so what I would like for you and for myself is for none of us to become triggered while this discussion is being had. And of course, the best way that we can do that to prevent becoming triggered is through employing our very best self-care, our very best self-care techniques, our very best grounding techniques. And as I say very, very frequently in my videos, your safety is extremely important. It's top priority to me, as is my own. And anything that you need to do that brings yourself into a state of feeling safe is the ideal plan for right now. I have the candle that I have in my little candle jar right there is a scented candle that's very, very relaxing and soothing for me. And I have my little grounding tool in my hands. But if at any time in this video that it becomes overwhelming for me, I will pause my video and then come back to it when I am grounded again, because I will not make a video where I'm activating my viewers through being activated. Okay, so if I'm triggered and I'm activated, it doesn't do anyone any good for me to perpetuate that right into other people. That's completely irresponsible of a trauma coach to do that. And I wouldn't do it. So sometimes I'll pause. You'll hear me in other videos where I say, I'm just pausing to ground for a moment. I'm just going to take a minute to focus on my breathing and to bring myself back into that state of calm, back into a state of groundedness. And we do that at the very beginning, when we begin to recognize what our body does, because each of us is unique and different. When we recognize what our own body does, that gives us the signs. Sorry, I dropped my notes. They're all over the floor. So our body tells us with those very subtle first cues that we're heading that way. Doesn't, for many of us, it doesn't just come on like just immediate, unless we're talking about something extremely triggering. Okay, nothing in this video is going to describe anyone being hurt, overtly being injured or anything like that. I'll give you a heads up, a clue. It's talking about being groomed. That's what I'm talking about today in my story. I'm talking about how the grooming began. Okay, so I'll leave it at that, and go through a little bit of housekeeping first. Okay, so so the title of this episode, for episode number 56, is The Touching Begins. Okay, and I'd like to ask you once again to please like, subscribe, and share my information. If you would be so kind, share it on whatever platform. If you belong to a trauma recovery community, then absolutely it's appropriate to share it there. And if you did so, I would appreciate it so much. Also, please put comments down below, because it helps the YouTube algorithm for my channel. And it helps me and it helps the trauma community, because we do learn from each other. And I get great value in reading the comments that I see in other YouTubers channels in their material that they put up. I absolutely read the comments because the community has so much valuable input. And I'm so thankful and appreciative that there's even many of the YouTubers leave the comment section turned on instead of turned off. So I really do appreciate it. And please hit the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I put up new content. And so yes, those things, and self-care, pause, do your self-care whenever you need to. The video will always be there. And if you don't come back to the video, if that's what's healthiest and best for you, then that's okay. That's exactly what I want you to do. Whatever you feel is best for your well-being and your safety. Okay, so I have my little grounding tool in my hand, and the room is filled with the wonderful scent of my candle. It's a spruce tree candle. It's one of my favorite scents. I showed a long time ago. I keep my box of it's right here. It's next to me all the time. I've always got my box of essential oils and my little diffuser that's on top. But those things are always right where I'm working. You can't see it in my videos, but very often something from that box is what's helping me to still remain connected to my body. And I do it through my sense of smell. I do it through all of my senses, but that's one of my favorites, is to use essential oils. And if I'm not using essential oil, then I'm using a scented candle. It's just what works for me. We all find our own way and what works best for us. All right, so it's the time of the video for me to ask the questions. The first question is, when you were at a very young age, did anyone pressure you to have a physical relationship even though you felt it was inappropriate for you at that time? For me, the answer is yes. Next question is, if you said yes, did you feel that you could express your need to not be physical? And did that person respect your decision and your stated boundary? Or did they cross your boundary? Well, in my case, at the very beginning, there was a tiny bit of respect for my boundary. When it was a relationship where I was getting kissed goodbye at the bus each day by my new boyfriend, Matt, there was a couple times where I would just kind of nudge a hand away a little bit. And I was given the message, not here, not like this, not now, not out in public. and he complied when I let that boundary be clear. You may kiss me and you're not doing anything else to me. But I can tell you, I had no idea how tenacious a person can be. I had absolutely no idea that there are people who are my own age who could keep coming at me and coming at me and coming at me and coming at me and coming at me, trying the same thing over and over again, even after I said no. And so that's what we're talking about today. And I will give you examples from my story, from my life, because you might be a person who's watching this who does not believe or have any inclination at all whatsoever to think that you may have been groomed when you were a kid. And hearing this story, you might feel a little bit differently about it. You might have some recognition of something that may have been done to you or to one of your friends, one of your siblings, somebody that you know. Okay, so I'm going to go into my story now, and remember, this is an important message. We will take care of our safety together. We will go and meet our own personal needs to bring us back into a state of emotional and mental safety, to be calm and to be not activated is the goal. Okay, so if it happens, it's not shameful or bad. It's natural, and it's how, it's our body being healthy. It's our body doing what it is designed to do for us, for our own ability to bring ourselves into a state of safety. So I was having what seemed like a pretty typical 8th grade year. And I was 13, and I was in a brand new relationship. Okay, my relationship started on Valentine's Day of 1977 with someone who I had been pining away for and secretly in love with for months. And, since I had first saw him on the last day of school in June of 1976, 7th grade. So I'll admit that I was a girl who was absolutely head over heels, bonkers in like with this kid, and I obsessed over him, and I fantasized about him all the time. I dreamed of being with him. It was my biggest joy in my entire life, was to just get to school and be in his presence. That was just fantastic for me. So it seemed no different than what all the girls around me were experiencing, at least the friends of mine who shared what their relationships were like. They were getting into their little dating practice relationships too, and then sharing them with me. And we would just have these huddles and, lunch table, and sometimes in the locker room at gym, or on the sidelines when we're waiting for our turn to do something in gym class. We'd be sitting there talking in a classroom before the teacher starts the lesson, if they allowed talking. Yeah, there was lots of chatter going on about these things. So pretty much everyone who had a boyfriend was doing the usual, holding hands, walking through the halls holding hands, a kiss at the bus, and nothing that brought undue attention onto themselves from the school staff. I didn't see anything more than that going on. When we pulled up in front of the high school, we saw a whole lot more action going on by the high school, I can tell you that. When dismissal time came, the teachers used it at the middle school. We had a couple teachers that if they had kids that were going on detention, they referred to it as the 234 club, because at 234 is when the final bell rang for school. And it's at the high school, the final bell, I believe, rang at 2:40. And then I think it was at 2:48 when the buses took off. You had very, very limited time to get yourself from one end of the school to the other, get your things in your locker, out of your locker, grab what you needed, and get to your bus, because they weren't waiting around for you. You had to be quick. And so the middle school had a little bit more relaxed schedule because the kids were younger. But when we pulled up in front of the high school, in the bus circle out front of the high school, some of the buses were like double, they're double file, not single file, like they were when they picked us up at the middle school. But when you're sitting on a bus and you're waiting for all of the kids to board, you got to sit there a few minutes. And if you're looking out the window, you might see a high school couple necking right up against your bus, or right by the bus in front of our bus, but we could see them. And there was nothing going on there except for, teenagers kissing. And so it was the 70s, it was the 1970s, and we had, we're only a few years into this whole relaxation of the public's view of public displays of affection. Because in the mid 1960s, you wouldn't dare do something like that. If you were a school student, you wouldn't dare have a public display of affection with anybody. It just did not happen. And so we get through, culturally, we're speaking about, the summer of love. What was that? 1967, I believe. And then we go through, the whole Woodstock era. And then we're going through having people who are completely divergent from the way that they expected people in certain age groups to dress and conduct themselves in the United States. The world was changing. Our school had a dress code just a few years before I ever got there, where girls couldn't even wear pants. They had to wear a skirt and a blouse or a dress every single day in public school. It wasn't a uniform, but there was a dress code. And the boys' hair was not allowed to, the side hair was not allowed to touch the ear. And the back of the hair was not allowed to touch the shirt collar. And they had to wear shirts with shirt collars. There was no t-shirt wearing. At that time, there was no coming into school, you know, a couple years before I got there to high school, there was no coming into the school with a t-shirt and jeans on. No, the boys had to wear what were called trousers or dress slacks. No sneakers, you had to wear shoes. Your sneakers were in your locker for when you went to gym. And so big changes had been happening socially and with appearance of teenagers. What we were allowed to wear and what we were allowed to do in public was becoming a whole lot more relaxed. And so that was being reflected in the environment that I was in, because now kids are you know, there's still a school dress code. There was no bare midriffs. There was no shoes like flip-flops. You could wear open-toed shoes, but you could wear sandals, but you couldn't wear flip-flops. They had to be actually attached to your foot with some sort of strap and a fastener, you know, laces, buckles, that sort of thing. And other than, oh, you couldn't wear hats in the classroom. And some teachers bent the rules on that. But in the dress code, it was written that you couldn't wear anything that was attention grabbing or would cause a distraction inside the school. If you're drawing huge amounts of attention to yourself, and no t-shirts with profanity printed on them. Apparently, a Playboy bunny was just fine, because in the previous video to this one, I told about how Matt came to the first dance of eighth grade, the only dance of eighth grade, because the blizzard happened that year. But he came to the school in a homemade Playboy bunny t-shirt that he made for himself. And nobody said a word. And so if my parents had seen a child his age, because at 13 years old, you are a child. You're in puberty, but you're a child. But if my parents had seen a kid wearing that, they would have been aghast. They would have been so deeply offended. Like, who the hell let that kid out of the house like that? That's disgusting. That's absolutely terrible. That's promoting pornography. That's the sort of thing that was still going on at that time. So we're a couple of weeks into our relationship, or a few weeks into it, and there's one day I'm walking to the bus and with Matt, and he's holding my hand, and just before I get on the bus, he put something in my hand. I could feel it's paper, and I look at it. Oh, it's a folded up note. And so I hopped up the steps on the bus, and, you know, said goodbye to him, hopped up the steps on the bus, and plopped myself down with Connie and Claudia, and I said, I just got a note from Matt. It was my first note from a boy, my very first one. And they're going, oh, open it, and I'm like, I'm not letting you read it. No, this is private. This is mine. And I'm turning my back on you guys for a minute, and I'm going to read my note, and I'll tell you if it's important. If there's anything you need to know, I'll tell you. So I turned away and I held it really close to myself, because I had seen high school kids on the bus reading a note, and somebody ripped it right out of their hand and then read it out loud to everybody. And I wasn't having that happen to me. Bullies do that sort of thing, and there were bullies on my bus. So I read it in private, and I turned away and held it really close and down low so that no one could see it. And my first note from a boy, wow, to me, this was a real big moment. It was exciting. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it went something like this. The first time he writes to me, this is how he addresses me. He says, hi, love, spelled L-U-V. And I'll tell you, nearly every single note that that I received from him after this one, and there were probably a couple hundred. They all started that way. Hi, love, LUV. And I had never seen anybody write that to anyone. I didn't even know anybody who called anybody that, to just call them love. Never heard of that. So the note goes like this. Hi, love. I wanted to tell you that I think you're beautiful, and I'm glad that you're my girlfriend. You're very special, and he spelled special wrong. He spelled it SPICHAL. You're very special, and I can't wait each day for 8th period, and he spelled period wrong. He spelled it PEROID, puroid. I can't wait each day for 8th period so I can hold your hand and kiss you goodbye. I love you. And there's a heart next to I love you. And it says Matthew at the bottom. This note's written in red pen. And he had to have borrowed the pen, most likely from a teacher, because they have red pens for corrections. Most of the kids aren't walking around with red pens. And I'm pretty sure that the paper had to have been borrowed too. And most likely from some girl in his last class or towards the end of the day. But the note made my heart beat fast because it said, I love you in it. And it was surreal because no one had ever said such sweet words to me before. That they think I'm beautiful and that they think I'm special. My father used to say, all my girls are beautiful. That's how come they're not going to have careers. They're going to get married and have babies. They're going to stay at home with their children. That's how I was told I was beautiful. It didn't feel good. It really didn't. It was not the kind of being told you're beautiful that feels like a vibrational match to you. It felt like somebody stealing my autonomy, because they were. But anyways, this was really special to me that I received this note with these words in it. And back then I believed that it was, of course, genuine love. I truly believed it was genuine love. How could it have been anything else? Around this time, the middle school had sort of modified talent show. It was coming up very soon. And this note that I received didn't say anything about inviting me to go to the talent show with him or anything like that. But I'm sitting on the bus thinking, ooh, I should ask him if he's gonna go to the talent show. And so he never gave me an answer. Not that I recall, but anyways, the talent show was held every year. And of course, I didn't go to it in 7th grade, and I don't even know why. I can't even recall. Maybe I didn't know about it. Maybe I had some other plans with my family or something, but I have no recollection of why I didn't go to it the year before. But it was an annual thing. But this year I was going, and so any kids who played an instrument or sang or did magic or did anything at all that was considered a talent could sign up to be in the talent show. And the talent show wasn't for a prize. It didn't have judges. It was just simply a show. And they're just putting on a show, almost like putting on a play. And so some kids performed in groups, some performed as a pair or as a solo act, and it was free to attend it. You didn't have to buy a ticket, and it was always held on a Friday night. And so my sister, Lori Alice, was a freshman that year, but her and the next door neighbor girl, Jackie, who she was still kind of loose friends with, and the girl from down the street that I call Candy Cirillo, they were all wanting to go to this thing because they had some friends that were in 8th grade, even though they were in 9th grade. And you didn't have to be in 8th grade to attend it. Anybody in the community could attend it if they wanted to. So it was just, you know, you knew what night it was free, just come on down to the school, get a seat in the auditorium and enjoy the show. So that was what we did. So, so we were going and we planned on going as a group. We all sat together and we had a really good time. And it was super fun. Couldn't believe the amazing talent of kids my own age and younger than me that came from a school. Remember, the music department allows us to sing church songs with the elderly church organist or the woman who was the alternate church organist who was her son was in my grade. So she's a younger woman, but she takes church music extremely seriously. And the only instruments that we had to play in Catholic school, as I've said before, were Cool Whip, empty, cleaned out Cool Whip containers that had navy beans inside of them. So we could shake them as a rhythm instrument, or we could tap them. And sometimes there were these little they were like modified drumsticks that somebody had made that we could tap them with. That was our instruments in that school. And so here I am sitting in an auditorium. Kid comes out with a saxophone and just blows the roof off the place. Other kids come out and do Irish dancing. There's kids who are doing, I mean, one girl come out and played a flute and clarinet piece with her friend. Just all kinds of wonderful talent was going on the show, in the show. And so in my old school, there had been a talent show. And I spoke previously about a boy who was in Lori Ellis's class, the boy whose mother was friends with my mom, and she took them to the zoo and to museums and to McDonald's afterwards. And well, that kid was a guitar player from a really young age. And when I was in 6th grade and they were in my Lori Ellis and that boy, I call him Stevie, when they were in 7th grade, there was a talent show at that school. And that boy, who was a really gifted musician, he had stood alone on the stage in the same gymnasium that doubled as our church. Or it had up until very recently when the new church was built, and he played guitar and sang, standing there, just him, his guitar and a mic stand. And he sings what song? The Animals. Remember the band The Animals? Well, they had a real big hit with a song called The House of the Rising Sun. And yep, this kid stood there and sang that, and I'm just innocent as can be, and I have no idea what that song's about. I just know I recognize it from the radio. So I'm a child. Okay. So a room full of parents, nuns, students, and priests, whole community. It's in this gymnasium in their rows of folding chair seats. And they've got this 7th grader on stage and singing about hitting the old whorehouse in New Orleans. Yeah. So and I don't mean to, you know, and again, here's my sensitivity, here's my compassion, here's my attunement when I'm going, what just came out of my mouth? I was raised that was the attitude towards that. And here I am as a certified trauma recovery coach, and I'm saying, no, sex workers are human beings. They deserve compassion. They absolutely are part of our community. And instead of saying a filthy epithet towards them, I catch myself and I say, can you hear yourself, what you just said? I made a disparaging remark because what lives in me as the programming that I had, it's not all gone yet. I want to think that it's gone, and yet it comes flying out. And then here's me, the true me, who says, oh, but Lynn, a sex worker is a sex worker, and it's somebody who does not deserve to have ugly things coming out of my mouth or anyone's mouth against them. It's completely marginalizing. It's completely othering them. It's complete disrespect. And so this is me cleaning up that energy right now. And I apologize for offending viewers with those words. I don't like to say if I offended viewers with those words. I say when I offended viewers with those words. That's me owning my words and saying, yeah, you can do way better than this, Lynn. You most certainly can. So, but yes, Catholic school has a kid on stage singing in that talent show to incredible applause. And he deserved it. He was a highly talented boy. So I guess in Catholic school, they're not that careful about talent shows, signups, and song content. But the public school, the year I was in 8th grade, had a bunch of kids who were obsessed with Queen and their new album, News of the World. It had just come out, and one very talented and 30-year-old looking girl. She was one of those girls who had the incredible ability to look like she was closer in age to the parents than she was to the students. And so she was the 8th grader that was, excuse me, the 7th grader. She was a very mature 7th grader that is on lead vocals with a 4-piece band as they performed We Will Rock You. And she forgot the lyrics twice and had to start 3 times. And I was in agony for this poor girl. I was in my seat feeling the pain and humiliation of that awful moment on stage, a moment of onstage embarrassment for her. And it was just because she would go, okay, I'm ready, we'll start again. And they started again. And she'd come up to the same point of the song and just completely derail at that point. And I'm just sitting there with my hands clenched, and I'm like, oh, please, 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 please let it go okay for her. I don't want her to be humiliated in front of all these people. And so especially since she was dressed really artfully and very expressively, and she did such an awesome job with her, you know, I mean, she's stomping and clapping and, you know, in time to the music, and she was just doing a great job. And the band, you know, it's a very powerful opening to a song. And then her disaster struck, and then it struck again. Excuse me. And what happens felt like a scene from a really good feel-good movie for adolescents. Everybody in the audience starts just singing it as loud as they could, just singing it with her, and making her feel completely supported in her moment on stage. And I'll never forget that moment because it was incredible. No one booed her. No one humiliated her. They sang it with her and got her through it. And it was just an amazing moment. And I'm here 60 years old and I can still remember it so clearly. I don't remember the girl's name, but I do remember that she was pretty much dying on stage. And what does the audience do? They're like, we got you. We'll do it with you. Don't have to worry about it. And the band played. Everybody sang. It was a very, very cool moment. So I'm thinking all these kids are so incredibly brave to get up on a stage, because I'm like, at that point in time, I'm still a really, really, really fearful kid, and I'm terrified of being humiliated and shamed, because that's the after effects of abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, and physical abuse for a child. It can make you disconnect from everyone and everything, and then you become too afraid. Some of us become too afraid to connect to anyone and anything. So, but these kids were incredibly brave to perform that way in front of their peers, mostly, and a few stage parents were there, and some parents who were just there to enjoy the show. But you can tell some of them are what we have come to know as stage parents. Yeah, some of these kids were being pushed. So it was clear that this was not a concert for the community and the parents. It was a show by the students for the students, but any parents who wanted to stay, of course, were allowed to stay. So, so I was very excited to be allowed to attend talent show, and there was the usual ride sharing for this one. And with our, our friends and their parents, we would switch off back and forth. So nobody had to do all the driving. If there was somebody else's kids going, you took turns. So of course, we're given the usual admonishments. Lori Ellis and I are given the usual admonishments in the mornings and the loud commands to not leave the building. No sitting with boys. Do not leave the auditorium. No flirting. No giving out this was coming into reality at this time. Do not give out your phone number to anybody. We don't want boys calling you. You do not give boys your phone number. No agreeing to meet any boys anywhere. No sitting near girls who were loose. Well, too late, by my mother's standards, pretty much everyone was. And I don't want you near any of those loose girls or wild girls, and no doing anything that would draw attention to yourself. Do not do anything that will draw attention to yourself. So the message always included, do what you're supposed to and nothing else. That was something my mother actually said, just do what you're supposed to and nothing else. And so that was what we carried into a show, a concert, a play, an event, a movie, whatever we went to, roller skating. Every place we went, all the way there. And then as soon as we get to the vehicle, it's time for the debriefing, and you better cough up everything that went on so that she can judge whether or not you've been sinning against God and going against her and Reginald. So on Friday, when Matt was walking me to my bus, I asked him, will you be at the talent show tonight? Are you going? Did you decide to go? And I had really hoped he would be going so we could sit together in the auditorium. But he said, nah, I hate those things. They're really stupid and boring. And once you've been to a real concert, you don't care for stuff like that. You don't want to go bother with things like that. He's saying to me, like bands that come, they're on tour and they come to the city that you live in. When they come to our city, yeah, that's a concert worth going to, but not a little rinky-dink stupid concert with children inside your own school. No. So I said, well, okay, but you've been to concerts? And he's like, yeah, of course I have. Said, didn't you ever notice my t-shirts? And they said, well, I knew you wore t-shirts with bands on them, but some of them have concert dates on them. And I thought you just got them at the store. And he's like, no, I buy them at the auditorium in the city where the concerts are. You can buy t-shirts out in the hallway before you go in or after you come out. They have concession stands there, and you can buy concert t-shirts. And I'm like, huh, your parents let you go, your parents go with you, right? No, they just dropped me and my friends off. Been doing it for a couple of years. So I'm like, I got to catch my bus, but I'm like, who have you been to see? Come on, what concerts have you been to? He's like, oh, and I'm just picking some. I can't remember the exact ones he said that there then, but he would have said something like, well, I've been to see Kiss, I've been to Aerosmith, I've seen the band called Styx, stuff like that. That's the sort of thing that he was saying. And I'm just standing there like going, oh my God. I'm thinking, oh my God, your parents let you go to concerts at age 13? Mine would never let me go. Never, ever in a million years. Even if I was 18, they wouldn't let me go to a concert. I'm certain of it. My oldest sister, one time when she was in 8th grade and the Osmonds came to our city, she pleaded and pleaded and pleaded to be able to go. And my parents allowed her to go. It was her birthday gift. They got her, there were 2 tickets, one for herself and one for her father. And she was going with a couple of her girlfriends that were going to be seated very close to them. They tried to get seats in the same section. And my father drove them in our van. And what happened was she was allowed to go, but she had to have her father sitting right in the seat next to her, or else it was not going to happen. And so at that time she would have been 13, but anyways, but no, mine would never allow me to go. So I was disappointed that he wouldn't be there. But I was still planning to go to my first public school talent show. Him not going was not going to make me not want to go. So we did go, and we had a fabulous time. And on, the following Monday, because we went on Friday, on Monday, Matt asked me in homeroom, sort of tongue in cheek, like, oh, you big, baby, that you are, or little baby that you are, how was your adorable talent show that you went to? Was it fun? And I said, it really was. And I'm like, it was awesome. I loved it. And he's laughing at me. He's like, come on. And I'm like, no, I loved it. And I can't wait to go again next year. I'll be in high school next year, but I want to come back for that. My sister and her, and our friends-ish sort of girls were in high school. They were in 9th grade, and they weren't embarrassed to go to a middle school talent show. So Matt said, school talent shows are stupid, and I would never waste my time at one. And I felt discomfort with his attitude and how mildly he did insult me. He insulted everybody that went or that would ever go. And my sister and little friends that were together with us, he was insulting us, not only for attending the show, but for enjoying it and for appreciating it at all. And I could see that he needed to be seen as way too cool to be ever seen at such an event. He wouldn't waste his time with such an event because he preferred world-class entertainment and touring bands that are on, album release tours. That's the level that he's at, and he's letting me know. Now, I'm not down there with you at that level. I'm way up here at a better level. And he let me know that only babyish dum-dums go to school events as if they're bona fide and real respectable music programs. These concerts for, people who think that that's a real music program, a real concert. No, it's not. And he said, it's only for people who don't get out and about to experience the real world. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what his words meant. That's exactly what the message was for me. People of my caliber don't do that. People who are kind of, dumb and immature, bunch of immature babies. Yeah, sure. Spend your Friday night at a concert with a bunch of your peers inside of your school, whatever. But the snide insults were forgotten by Matt. I'm seeing the very beginning of this, the snide insults, and then he forgets it. And he walked away from me as if he had said nothing, and there wasn't an insult, and as if I imagined that brief moment of being insulted and devalued. This is the first time that he lets me see that side of him. Up until this moment, he is the most sweet, soft-spoken, adorable, congenial, lovable Mr. Wonderful. And all of a sudden, he lets me see the side of him that is judgmental and non-appreciative and snarky and conceited and arrogant. But anyways, I imagined that brief moment of being insulted and devalued it's just a one-off. He must be having a bad day. Don't we all make excuses like that when somebody starts treating us that way? We excuse it away. Compassionate people go, oh, well, maybe something happened this morning, or maybe he's not feeling right today, or maybe something happened that I don't know about that would cause him to feel this way. So I should overlook it because I'm kind and I don't want to be, thinking that he's a harsh person. So I most definitely caught this direct insult, and it wasn't my imagination. But Matthew Rutecki believed himself to be a superior human being and clearly felt full entitlement to verbally express that superiority at any time or way that he chose, and that whomever he insults has the full responsibility upon them to get over it and ignore it and pretend it never happened, and to not let on in any way that you were just insulted by him. And it became very, very clear to me early on. You're supposed to overlook it and pretend it didn't happen. Because that's what he's going to do. He's going to pretend it didn't happen, and then just snap back like a rubber band, right back to the sweetness. And that silly thing that I just said that degraded you a little bit, just let it go. Didn't even happen, actually. So I found it to be sharp and offensive, and I remembered my girlfriends and their advice because I talked to them about just about everything. And they said, in order to keep your boyfriend, see, you're new at this. We've been doing this for a little while before you have, and we're the advice givers. And in order to keep your boyfriend, see, we're teaching you, Lynn, you need to go along with some stuff that you don't like, because if you don't, he could just drop you and move on to the next girl. And that's what we called it. We called it being dropped, being broken up with, being dismissed out of the relationship. And there's always, we're in a class of 400 girls. It doesn't mean he only has to date an 8th grader. He could date a 7th grader if he wanted to. And I found out many, many years later that he absolutely was dating a high school girl right around the same time. He let that slip when we were on a vacation. And we had just come out of a restaurant and we were having the most gloriously wonderful romantic time in a different city. And he stops walking. And I thought something was wrong. I said, what's the matter? You feel okay? And he goes, well, I was just thinking about something. He said, did I ever tell you? I can't remember if I ever told you. When I was in ski club in 8th grade, remember that? And I said, yeah, I remember you were in ski club. And he said, well, I was in ski club for 7th grade too. But when I was in 8th grade and I was in ski club, I was going out with one of the 9th graders and she was in ski club too. And we used to hold hands all the way to the place where we skied. And we'd hold hands all the way back to the school parking lot where we got picked up. And he said to me, she was a very good kisser. And we spent a lot of time necking on that bus. And I'm standing there on a sidewalk in Cleveland, Ohio, next to a really awesome, sounds like a street fair that goes on in a neighborhood there in the summertime. And I'm just standing there and going, what did you just say to me? What did you just drop on me? Way back a long time ago, when I was first dating you, I said, were you seeing that girl the same time as me? He's like, oh, no. It was just before you. And I stood there and said out loud, I'll never know. I'll never know for sure. You're telling me this part, but I don't believe you about what you're saying about when that happened, because I have a very strong feeling, my gut's telling me. No, he had a few plates spinning in the air at the same time, just like they used to do on the old Ed Sullivan show with people whose talent was being a plate spinner. That's the way I look at that. Anyways, back into my story. So my friends are telling me, no, you got to go along with some of the stuff that he wants, because if you don't give him what he wants, you're going to be boyfriendless, and you're going to be seeing him walking down the hall holding somebody else's hand and kissing somebody else by the school bus. And they said, you know, we've known him for a long time. He's always got a girlfriend. And so I said, okay, all right. And I listened to this very bad and highly ignorant advice that came from my two friends, Connie and Claudia, and a few others. And it was really, really, really poor advice. And I didn't know that. So I listened to it. I'm just a kid, 13-year-old. So Matthew had a noticeable way of casting an insult at you, and then seconds later, acting as though it never happened at all. And he just changed the subject. And this took me a long time to recognize. He would be nice to me right after he did it. He would be so sweet to me right after he did it. I'm gonna press pause here for a second, folks, and tell you this is a baby narc who is using his baby narc practices on this girl, and he is doing the tactics of trauma bonding. This is, I hurt you, and then I'm the person who swoops in and is so sweet and kind to you right afterwards. I caretake your emotions, and I make your bad feelings about what I just did to you just flutter away. And then I tell you, see, you're good, you're fine, you're okay. This is trauma bonding right out of the effing gate in this relationship, and I couldn't see it. And so sorry, got a phone call and I had to get it off the screen. All right, so that's what's happening. And I have no way to detect this whatsoever. It's like I'm 13 years old and somehow I should be able to detect whether or not there's false currency, counterfeit currency being circulated in the pockets of my school, classmates. It would be virtually impossible for me to have any ability to recognize that whatsoever. And that's what was happening there. I had absolutely no possibility of ever being able to recognize that that's trauma bonding, because I had never heard of such a thing. The concept of that, even without the name for it, was completely not available to me. And so I'm experiencing a person who is manipulating me and trauma bonding me to him. And I cannot see it. This is going to be a recurring theme through this entire series. The Monogamous at 13 series is really shining a flashlight, a spotlight right onto these vignettes that I'm showing you. How early and how subtle trauma bonding can be in a relationship. So yeah, it took me a very long time to recognize it. He just changed the subject, and it took me a long time to recognize that he was going to be immediately after the insult, an especially kind thing he said to me. Oh dear, now they're going to bed. If I tell them not to bark, they still do it anyways. So sorry for the interruption. So he would kiss me or hug me or give me a compliment or be supportive towards me in some way right after flinging a mild to moderate insult or comparison or degrading comment or anything that would put my antenna up, like, what did he just do to me? What did he just say to me? And then would come the affection and the acceptance and the soothing words and the hug, and right back to being just as sweet as honey. And so I wasn't old enough or educated enough to recognize that this is a tactic and it's being used on me. So sometimes it would be just a simple jab, like, hey Lynn, nobody likes that song. If I sat there and I said, oh, you know what, I heard a song on the radio and I just absolutely love it, and it's stuck in my head, and I'm glad it's stuck in my head because I love the song. And he would just go, hey Lynn, nobody likes that song, it's just stupid. And if I said, I really love this new song I heard, Other people would confirm to me that, yes, they liked it too. Yes, it's a great song. Or I just bought that album, or I just bought that single. You'd still buy 45s then. We were giving each other 45s as gifts for birthdays. All right, so if I said I really love something, he would do that to me in front of other people. Like, come on, nobody likes that. Why do you like that? And so, as if he was the better person, more worldly, better informed, having much better taste, and he was always the better judge of what was acceptable, admirable, or what was beneath him. If he liked it, then it was cool. It was awesome. If I liked it, oh my God, your taste is just so icky. But I can help you with that. You stick with me long enough, and you'll turn into a cool person by osmosis from hanging out with me. And some of it'll rub off on you. He wasn't saying that. That was the energy that I was getting. So the middle school drama club was performing a play, and because of the time of year that it was, it seemed very out of place. It seemed misplaced. But remember, we had Christmas vacation, and we had the blizzard of 1977, and we also had an upstate ice storm that year with super high winds, and school shut down for a few days. And so the school schedule was just goofed up that year. Nothing seemed to be from winter break on, nothing seemed to be on its normal schedule. And so drama club had been preparing to put on the play A Christmas Carol, but because they were originally planning to do the play after we got back from Christmas break, but they weren't ready because they couldn't get to the rehearsals. They couldn't get all costumes done and the stage props and everything. They just couldn't get it done. It was completely out of their control. So here we are told, guess what, kids? Today there's a special production going on, and it's the dress rehearsal for the drama club. And we're taking you out of classes. You're going to miss a few classes because in the middle of the day, go into the auditorium. There will be an announcement on the loudspeaker from the principal or the vice principal to tell you when it's time to all go to the auditorium for the play. And he said, this is our homeroom teacher telling us, okay? Mr. Griffin is telling us when you get dismissed from your classroom that you're in, it's time to go to the auditorium. Remember, nobody goes just straight to the auditorium. You all go to homeroom. And then we'll walk there together in an orderly fashion, and each homeroom teacher is going to sit with their students. So don't just go to the auditorium, come here first. So we're like, okay, everybody got it. So we all go to the auditorium, and so we're in the exact same place where, just a short time before I'd been there for the talent show. And I'm placing this at around the first week of March. I think this happened, can't be sure. But anyways, we were seated by homeroom, and so I get to sit by Matt for this performance, and I get to sit next to my boyfriend for the entire play. Gee, what could be better? I was super excited. So the middle school had one drama club production each year. And so, as I said, this one was off schedule. It wasn't at its normal schedule. So seeing a Christmas play, we didn't care because it meant we were not in regular classes. Like, bring it on. We'd love to watch a Christmas play. So yeah, because the students hadn't even had enough time to fully learn their lines. They just couldn't have done it earlier in the year. So here we are. And that particular day, I didn't know we were going to a play that day, but I had chosen one of Tammy's hand-me-down muslin shirts, and it was almost tunic length. And it was beautiful. It was light blue, and it had a mandarin collar, and it had embroidery, beautiful embroidery all the way down the whole button placket. And it made me feel like $1 million when I wore it. And she had given it to us. She had given us a few of her cast off clothes that she didn't like or had become too snug for her or whatever. But anyways, it was now mine. And it was long and I didn't want to wear it, just almost looking like a mini dress. So with my jeans, so I tucked it into my pants. I tucked it in the best I could. And I had on a tiny bit of cologne this day because I wanted to smell nice for Matt. And I didn't know that I was going to be sitting next to him in an auditorium. I had no idea about that. Sorry about that. No, I had no idea that I was going to be sitting next to him for an extended period of time that day. And I was so glad that I had given myself a couple spritzes of lovely cologne. So here I am, I'm sitting next to him, everyone's seated and the lights go down and it's time for the show to start. And I'm on the end seat on the aisle and he's in the seat next to me. And so he slouches way down, the way kids do, they slouch in the chair and their knees are against the seat in front of them. And I slouch down a little bit too, but I'm really short and my knees don't touch the seat in front of me. But I'm mimicking what he's doing and I just, I slouch down a little bit in the seat too. And so when the lights went down, all the whistles and cat calls and students yelling woohoo and all that stuff was happening. And it's my first experience being seated in an auditorium for the purpose of enjoying a stage production. My first time seeing a play. And I'm sitting by him and I was pretty excited about it, but Matthew did something that was impossible for me to ignore. First, he had reached over the arm of the chair between us and he held my hand. And that went on for a few minutes. But then he did something that I totally wasn't expecting. He let go of my hand and then brought his right arm right through, into my seat, like the back of my seat, right behind my body. And he was touching the back of my tucked in shirt. And then he started to pull on my shirt like he was attempting to untuck it. And I moved in a way that made clear that I wasn't welcoming his intrusion into my personal space. No, please, if anyone is becoming activated, please stop the video if this is too much for you. Okay, I really don't want you to be unsafe. So he kept his arm there very, very still. And he's inside my personal space and he tugged the back of my shirt upwards again. He's just got his arm, his fingers around the fabric of my shirt. He's just pulling up, like popping his arm upward like this, pulling my shirt, trying to untuck it. And I pulled away in my seat like this. And I thought that he got the idea. I didn't think I had to say out loud, I'm like pulling away and adjusting myself in my seat. And so I settled back into my chair and sure enough, a few moments later, not minutes later, moments later, back he comes again with his arm in his hand inside of my chair and grabbing the side of my shirt, like where my, at my flank, he's trying to pull it out on the side. Then he leans over and whispers in my ear. He leans right in close and he whispers, "My God, how long is this shirt that you're wearing?" And I'm like, "It's long." I wasn't encouraging that. So this behavior continues to the point of I'm just getting pissed off. I'm irritated. I'm trying to watch a play. And he thinks he gets to get, grabby with me in this place. So I make it very clear to him that I'm irritated. I make it very clear. I'm like, mm-mm. And he still persists. Comes back one more time. And he's at the back of my body, and he's got a handful of the shirt, and he's tugging it upward again. And I just turned and looked at him and I said, "Leave me alone." Just like that loud. And I wanted to watch the play, and I didn't really think I wanted anyone putting their hand inside my clothing at that time, nor did I feel that Matt had the right to just arbitrarily decide on his own that he gets to touch me whenever he wants to, wherever he wants to, and I get no vote in that. I get no say in what happens to me or not, really. I thought he was incredibly confident, bold, and sure of himself. This part is important to the story. This part that I'm going to tell you right now. Even after I pulled away, moved his hand, and said the words very clearly to him, "Leave me alone," he didn't stop. He stopped for a couple minutes. And he still persisted in what he wanted to do. He went right back to tugging on my tucked in tunic, and he said out loud to me, "Geez, why'd you have to make this so hard for me with this long shirt?" He got a couple fingers inside my shirt, but apparently he was disappointed that he didn't get to put his entire hand either down into the back of my pants or up my shirt. He ran his hand across my back for the purpose of feeling my bra. Something about how I saw him that day changed. He showed me that he has a big, huge set of brass clappers, and he doesn't care where he is or what anyone says or does. If he wants to put his hands on you or on your clothing or inside your clothing, he's fully entitled to do so. And your opinion doesn't matter. It counts for nothing. And I'm noticing another very important factor here. Matt seemed to be very aware that I disapproved of his behavior. He was getting every signal from me that I could give him where I'm not encouraging that at all. I am absolutely not tolerating it at all. And he didn't give a rodent's behind whether I approved of it or consented for it or allowed it in any way. He just didn't give enough UCK what I thought. So I had a choice to make in that moment. And I heard the voices inside my head of my friends, my parents. I'm hearing my inner critic, which is, I now know that that's what that's called. I'm hearing the inner critics inside of me, but I'm also hearing the cheerleaders that are my friends, and they're telling me that there's some things you just have to go along with. And if you want to keep your boyfriend, even if you don't like it or if it scares you, you gotta let it go. You have to let it happen anyways. It'll be over soon, and then you'll still be his girlfriend, and you won't likely lose him to some other girl that he likes as well as you. Whoever is the next in line, because I had already figured out from waiting my turn that Matthew liked to have girls lined up like game pieces on a chessboard. So for years to come, Matt expressed his exasperation that I wore such a long shirt that day. Can't tell you how many times he said, "Oh God, remember that shirt you wore during the play in 8th grade? Whatever made you wear such a long shirt that day? You made that really hard for me." And I would just cringe. And all he could think about is how much my plan to wear that shirt that day interfered with his plan to get to touch me that day. And just by stroke of luck, fell right into his lap that we were going to be at a play. So that made things even easier for him. Oh my God, she's going to be sitting right next to me. This is going to be a slam dunk. I'll have no problem. I will have no problem getting to do this thing that I'm planning without telling her that I'm going to do to her. I'm not going to show her that I have control. So it was right around that time that before homeroom and at our last visit to our lockers each day, Matt was leading me around a corner at the end of the hall near an exit that was used only for the shop teachers. No students went in and out that door. It wasn't even where we could see it if we were where we were supposed to be. But he was luring me into places where nobody could see us, away from teachers and other students. And during the time while we were out of sight, we were kissing, but Matt was also inching his hand up my shirt. He would do it just a tiny bit each day. He'd put his hand inside my shirt and just be massaging my side, or he'd put his hand up the back of my shirt and just touch the bottom of my bra. And he was doing this tiny bits at a time, going super slow motion, day after day after day after day, increasing how far he would go. And so he's getting bolder, and he's untucking my shirts, and he was gradually getting me to tolerate more, to allow more. And it wasn't without protest. There were plenty of times that I said, you know, I gotta go. I don't want to miss my bus. And that meant, nope, no more of that for you. We're going. And I was telling him that I was sure that I wasn't supposed to allow anyone to touch me that way. And I even told him multiple times, even before we were ever, he was ever my boyfriend or I was his girlfriend. I had been telling him in study hall and in homeroom, I was telling him about how my father had told me that if he ever finds out that any man or boy would ever put their hands on me in a sexual way, that that Reginald was going to kill them. And I said, any man or boy who molests me, if my father finds out, it'll be their last day on earth. So I was pretty sure at this point that if this wasn't quite molestation, it was coming down the track towards me. I have to tell you, I didn't even fully understand molestation at that point. But I said things like, I think I have to go now, or I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to be allowing you to do this. And Matt would say things like, come on, I'm not doing anything wrong. Or he'd say, I love you. This isn't wrong if someone loves you. Or he'd say, come on, no one can see, it's just me. And I love you, and I think you're beautiful. I'm just trying to show you how much I think you're beautiful. And sometimes he would use flattery and declarations of love, and other times he would just say that it's not sex. And when I said, I'm not supposed to have sex with you or anyone, he'd say, this isn't sex, Lynn, this is affection. We're not having sex. Sex is something completely different from this. This is just innocent touching. This is just affection. And it's just boyfriend, girlfriend affection, that's all. And if you know, all boyfriends and girlfriends do this stuff with each other. Did you realize that that's part of being someone's girlfriend? And I'd be like, no, I actually didn't. And you'd say, well, it isn't wrong, especially if you love the person. And clearly you love me and I love you. So there's nothing wrong with this. I don't know why you're so uptight about it all the time. So I'm aware now that I was absolutely, without a doubt, being groomed a little bit each day. And this is to wear down my resistance and to let go of any boundaries that I have. Any person who is highly manipulative and exploitative and controlling and domineering and pushy and very possessive of you, they are not cool with boundaries. They have to disintegrate your boundaries. And some of them do this where they're just as persistent and patient and steadfast and tenacious, determined, committed, just constant persistence. It's like, this can take as long as you want. I don't mind chipping away at this and moving the dial 1/2 a click every single day towards the goal that I have in mind. And they can do it so well. They can be so proficient at it and efficient at it and practiced at it. that they can do it if you're, especially if you're a very innocent girl like I was, very protected girl like I was to some degree. You know, there's abuse and alcoholism at my house, but my parents think they're highly protective of me, which is kind of a joke. But anyways, that's the part that's especially abusive, what I just described. Because they have a plan and they're not letting you know about the plan. They're not revealing the entire plan to you. You don't even get to know that there is a plan. And then it involves you giving up your boundaries and you being completely dominated by them. And so that's the part that I find especially abusive. I recognize that my autonomy and my ability to think and decide for myself is being worn away and deteriorated and, you know, eventually obliterated, but still here it's just being deteriorated. And it's happening to me at home and at school for different purposes by different people. So I've got the opposite pendulum swing. Again, the pendulum swing is so important. The parents at home that are saying never, ever, ever under any circumstances let this happen. And then all the way over, the swing is to the other side where it's now, this is supposed to happen. It's your duty if you want to be, you know, in a relationship, you better grow up a little bit, little girl, because this is what the grown-ups do. And this is what teenagers do. And this is what you're supposed to do because part of being my girlfriend includes this. Didn't you know that? I'm so sorry to tell you, but that's what being a girlfriend is. Sorry that you had such a childish opinion and view of it. Hate to break it to you, but this is the real world. And this is what teenagers do. And it's natural and it's normal and it's healthy and it's good. And it's, you know, this is nothing to be ashamed of. This is nothing to hide. This is nothing to say no to. And so my boundaries are obliterated. And at school, there's a boy who has recognized that I'm quite easy to dominate and control and is doing every single thing he could possibly ever do to push closer and closer to accepting for me. He's pushing close. He's getting closer and closer to getting me to accept all of his touching and boundary crossing without protest. That's the goal. I'm being worked on to let go of the word no, and to let go of protest and let go of questioning and let go of making my own decision of what will happen with my own person. And so sometimes I would push his hand away and he would lavish praise on me when I tolerated it instead of pushing the hand away. I would get more affection and love and acceptance and closeness and just total approval of me if I allowed it. And then what would he do if I disallowed it? Cold shoulder. A little bit of distancing. Being really quiet. Not saying out loud that he loves me. Just letting me know he's a little bit cross with me for having a boundary. And so at age 13, I had never, ever heard of grooming behaviors. And this is absolutely without a doubt grooming, and which is the tactics of a sexual abuser, as we all know, and the ways that a sexual abuser or molester will condition you over a very long time, a very long, slow time, in order to get you to comply without protest and to even believe that you want or desire the sexual contact. They will program you and absolutely get you to believe on some level that it's what you want. It's not wrong. You want this. You're my girlfriend, right? You want this. So I believed that all molestation was done by old men to children or teenagers. That's what I mean, my friends had talked about something called a pervert on a playground. My family never used that word. I said it one time. I called one of my siblings a pervert while we were doing dishes, and I got slapped hard across the face and said, "Don't ever say that word again." Well, it seems to me that perhaps if my parents had said that word, told us what a pervert was, and told us what a molester or sexual abuser was, instead of defining it as somebody that just is out to get me, some nebulous evil monster out in the world that's going to find me one day. Could be a boy, could be a man, but they want you to believe that that's all, perverts are old people that come after children. That's what a molester that's your own age wants you to believe. I'm not a molester. Come on. I love you. This is just love. So I believed that a molester had to be creepy and hang around near playgrounds in order to be a molester. I thought they were priests, because these stories are just starting to break in the 70s. I'm becoming aware, it might have been longer than that, but I'm beginning to notice it on radio and TV, that they're doing stories about priests who have harmed parishioners and children in the schools. And, I thought that they were neighborhood men who lived alone, or people in faraway cities, but not out in the rural areas. I'm just thinking that no, all these people out in the suburbs and in rural areas, there's none of that around here. You have to go pretty far away, like to New York City or to Los Angeles, to bump into somebody who might do something like that. So since this was my sweet and loving boyfriend, he couldn't be a molester, right? There's no way, right? That's what I'm asking myself. No, he couldn't be. That's a ridiculous thought. Don't ever think that about him. He's just sweet and loving. So another school event was coming up in March, at the end of the month of March. And it was a roller skating party, again, just for the 8th graders, because there's no way they could ever fit 1,200 kids into that gymnasium at the same time, much less with roller skates on, with having them have room to skate. No, it's only the 8th graders, and it's they hired a company that would bring the roller skates and rent them to you for 50 cents for the night, and you had to buy a ticket for $1, near the cafeteria doorway. And then so here's this skating party, and I am longing to go to more physical activities, because I had been knocked out of physical activity for over a year with a severe bleeding disorder, and I had finally had that in remission, and so I'm back to regular activities, and man, do I want to go roller skating. And I had gone to when my next door neighbor friends and their cousins and my siblings, we went roller skating, but where's Lynn? In her sneakers, watching at the railing, because I wasn't allowed to have skates on a few of those times. So because of my ITP, my bleeding disorder. But anyways, I had gotten to be an okay skater, sort of okay, not good. I was still pretty clumsy on skates, but I could do it. And so it wouldn't be anything nearly as good as the real roller rinks that we went to, but it was way better than being home with Eloise and Reginald on a Friday night, that's for sure. But I knew it would come with a price. To be able to go to anything, you always had to pay a price. And the price is the speech about how immoral and how they were saying the word, because we would get slapped for saying the word, but telling us how slutty we were, about how much they knew that we were just dying to go take off with a boy and go do something that's vulgar and not allowed. They just were telling us over and over and over and over again, the constant drum beats of, we know you want to do that stuff. So that's how come we have to talk to you in the car all the way, or the van all the way to the event, giving you the speech the entire time. If our friends are in the vehicle, it was modified to not quite sound so oppressive and horrifying. But it would be just as we're getting out of the vehicle, she'd say, remember what I've always told you. And that's all she had to say. We had it all memorized by heart. We knew exactly what she was talking about. She they would have to splatter us with mistrust and tales of being thrown away like Tammy if we dared to do anything that wasn't allowed. So I got my $1 and I paid at lunch for my ticket, and I told my little girlfriends that I could go, and Matt said he couldn't skate, but he'd give it a try. And so he got his ticket too. And this, so this thing is, on this Friday night, and I'm the only person in my family who can go. And I didn't even know if my friend, needed a ride, because normally they would call you if they needed a ride. So I just figured, no, I'm just the only one who's going to be in the vehicle this time. So I get in the vehicle with Eloise, and naturally she does the whole spiel like she normally does. And when I got there, I thought it would be a brilliant idea to even let the kids just come outside of the gym, let them skate all the way straight down those straight long hallways and stuff. No, that wasn't allowed. We had to stay inside the gym. But I'm remembering that I'm told as I'm getting out of the car, don't you dare come outside of that gym when you're not supposed to. Don't go outside of the building. Most certainly do not go outside of the building with a boy. Don't hold hands with a boy. Don't touch a boy. You better not have a boyfriend. You better not be hoping to get one at this. Okay. Again, the same programming over and over again. So, but it was very fun, and we were all having a really good time. And Matthew, he skated, but you could tell he had never skated before, and he was having some trouble with it. And he came up to me, and he asked me something. He said, "Hey, I have an idea. Let's turn in our skates now and go outside for a while. It's almost over. It's gonna be over in half an hour, but let's just leave early. Let's go outside." And I said, "I know I'm not allowed to leave the event before it ends. I'm just simply not allowed to, and I'm absolutely not allowed to leave with a boy. So sorry, no, I can't risk that." And he knew about what had happened to my oldest sister, but and so I said, "No, I can't do it. I'm sorry." And Matt said, but you want to, right?" And I shook my head, yes, but I meant no. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I want to. And but I really, everything inside of me was going, no, you do not want to do that. No, you do not. And so I did not want to do anything that would make me be thrown out of my house and out of my family. And Matt went and sat on the lowest bench of the bleachers, changing from skates to his black and yellow Puma sneakers. And I sat next to him in my roller skates. And he said, "Come on, you're not going to get caught. We'll be back to the door when everyone else comes out to get picked up. So no one will even know. No one, whoever's picking you up, if it's your mother or your father, they're not going to know that you came out early with me, because there'll be so many kids coming out the door. And they aren't going to be able to, it's dark out. They're not going to put it together that you were outside already." And so I gave in. I was driven there by myself in my mom's van. She had a big green and white Ford Econoline window van. No one else needed a ride. Like I said, it was just me, no Claudia or Lori Ellis along for this one. So here I am aware. The rest, I ran out of space on my notes, so the rest I'm just going to have to recount telling you this way without notes. So I got my skates off, and I put on my sneakers, handed my roller skates. And I had borrowed my sister Margie's denim jacket that night. I think at the time that was one of only 2 garments that she had that I could actually fit into, but it was tight. And I loved it. She had this denim jacket that was almost like a blazer, but it had a brass zipper that went from the bottom hem all the way up to here, and it had a denim tie belt, and it was just a really nice jacket, and I loved wearing it because it made me feel so grown up. But I had asked her if I could borrow it that night. She said, "Yeah, I guess so, but you're going to have to loan me something of yours, like a necklace or a pair of shoes or something. You're going to have to let me borrow something the next time I ask." I'm like, "Okay, it's a deal." So I put on, I go to the coat rack, and I get my jacket, and we get to the door, and there's a few cars in the parking lot, but nothing like what it looks like when something's letting out. And I just figured they're probably the chaperones, the few teachers' cars. And I really gave it a split second thought, was how long I dwelled on that thought. And And I noticed that we step out the door and it is just pouring rain. Not the kind of rain that bounces off the pavement, but the kind that is a steady soaking drizzle. And if you're outside in it for longer than 2 minutes, you're going to be soaked to the skin. And so he takes me by the hand and walks me along the side of the building. And then, we come out to the parking lot. And he's steering me, basically holding my hand and saying, come on, let's go this way. And he takes me around the corner of the building, which is facing the athletic field. And it's where there's the ramp. It's a concrete ramp that goes down to the basement of the school, where the school gets deliveries through that entrance, through that ramp. And we were standing on the railing next to it. And I had my back against that railing for that ramp that goes down. And there's no ledge to get under or anything out there. It's just pouring down on us. And we're kissing, and he asks me a question. And it was the most bizarre question. Here I am. I'm such an innocent girl. I don't know the sort of things that public school kids say. I've heard some stuff, but not everything. I hang around with some nice kids. But anyways, what he says to me is, have you ever played hands down? I said, yeah, of course I've played hands down. I don't play it very much anymore. It's an old game, played it more when I was a kid. And I think that my 2 younger siblings play it. And he starts laughing at me. And he's just like throwing his head back and laughing. He says, Lynn, I am not talking about the children's game with the plastic colored hands. I'm asking you if you've ever played hands down. And I stand there in the rain, and I'm like right like chest to chest with him, except for he's a lot taller than me, so it's like chest to belly. And I said, oh, okay, I know what, oh yes, okay, I understand now. And he says, have you? And I said, of course not. No, never. And he says, you wanna? And I said, I don't think that's such a good idea. No, I don't want to. And he's like, are you sure? Come on, you'll like it. And I'm like, no, thank you. I think I'm gonna go back inside. I'm gonna go wait by the door and just wait for my mom to pick me up. So I went back to the doorway, and I am just absolutely drenched, and it's March, and the rain is freezing cold. It's not cold enough to snow, it's rain, but it is very, very, very cold. And so I'm shaking, I'm just shivering, and I'm scared. And I go back to the door, and the door is open, and kids are spilling out of that door and coming out and going to cars. And I'm walking around the parking lot trying to find where is my mother parked. Looking for the van. The van's not here. And then all of a sudden I stopped in my tracks. I'm like, oh, she didn't bring the van. She brought the car. And then I start going, I wonder if she was here early and if she saw me come out that door. So I opened the door to get in the car, and I said, hi, Mom. And she says to me, don't you say hi to me, you filthy, dirty girl. That's what she said. I didn't say anything. I just put my seatbelt on and waited to be driven home. And I'm like, I am so busted right now. And she says to me, and the only thing that's going through my mind is, I'm not going to get to sleep in my bed tonight. I am not going to be allowed to remain in this house. And I don't know where on earth I'm going to go, because I'm not as fortunate as my sister was in her teenagehood at 18 years old, that she had a family, a friend with a family that was just a couple miles from our house, and they took her in. But I'm thinking, there's nobody who's going to take in a 13-year-old. And I don't know where they're gonna take me or where they're gonna put me. I have no idea, but I'm scared to death right now. And so what I did was I just sat there and let her rage at me, and she was asking me all kinds of questions and I wouldn't answer them. I just sat there being quiet. And at this point, I literally was too scared to cry. I was in shock. And I recognize now as a trauma coach, yes, indeed, I was in shock. And I was having a freeze response to my trauma. Couldn't talk if I had wanted to. That's a freeze response. Couldn't move, couldn't talk. I'm just sitting there, essentially like a wild rabbit when they're trying to not be seen and they're traumatized and they just hold completely still and flatten themselves to the ground. So it's the longest ride home I've ever had. And we go inside the house and Eloise enters the dining room through the back door right in front of me. And as we go through the door, there's my father's back to us. He's sitting at the table doing his usual evening drinking. And by now he's quite sloshed on Wild Irish Rose wine. And she says, Reginald, we've got ourselves a problem. This girl was doing filthy things with a boy outside in the rain behind the school when I went to pick her up. And he just boomed his voice at me, sit your ass down right now. And I peeled off that soaking wet coat and I hung it up. There was a coat tree in the corner and I hung it up. And I went back and I sat down. And the two of them grilled me for, I would say, well over an hour. We want to know every single thing that you did. We want to know every single thing that he did. We want to know his name. We're calling his parents. He's never coming near you again. We're going to be calling the school on Monday and having it arranged that he's never going to come near you again. We want you switched to a different team that he's not on. We want you to have absolutely nothing to do with him ever again. And of course, you know, my freeze response has worn off and I am now absolutely beside myself with horror at what they were doing to me, the names they were calling me, and they were calling me the filthiest names. They were saying absolutely wretched, nasty, cruel things to me and about me. And of course, the shaming would begin where you have to be made an example of to the other children. Look at what your sibling has done. You don't ever want to be as horrible a person as this girl that's your sister. Every one of you should be deeply ashamed of her. Telling me I should be deeply, deeply ashamed of myself. Because I'm nothing but a no good SLUT. Not allowed to say it. I'll get slapped across the face if I say it. But they can say it when they're angry enough and when they caught you. And so some of you may have had the unfortunate experience of when something like this occurs in your life and your parents make you feel that you are worthless and you're shameful. You're a scourge upon the earth. And that God can't stand you, Jesus can't stand you, the Holy Spirit can't stand you, your entire family can't stand you, and your life as you knew it just came to a screeching halt. And now it's going to be real, real different. And when they finally decide they've had enough of terrorizing you and traumatizing you, then the final insult might be that yes, you should be deeply ashamed of yourself, but that the sight, what they told me was the sight of you makes us sick. Get out of our presence. We cannot stand to be near you. You're just filth. You're worthless. You're garbage. And I can't even put into words accurately for you how horrifying this was for me. How deeply, deeply traumatic this was for me. And this is, in case anyone is unclear on toxic shame, this is a very good example, a horrible, horrible example, but it's an accurate depiction of toxic shame. When somebody thinks you didn't do something bad, you did all right, you did something bad, but you are, the biggest problem that we have right now is that you are a bad object. You're a bad thing. You are bad. You are badness. You are wickedness. And I can assure you, I was not. I told them over and over again, I didn't do anything. I said no. Oh, and they would say, oh, bullshit. Oh, bullshit, liar. If you had to go someplace where nobody could see you, you were damn well doing filthy things. Didn't give me a single moment to be heard when I said, but I didn't. But I said no. I didn't do the thing that he wanted me to do. And yet, one of the very strong messages was with me that night from them was, any person who would coax you to go do something like that is a terrible human being. This is a person you should never have anything to do with under any circumstances. And the words, this is when the words began with, he does not respect you. He does not respect you. He does not love you. It would be impossible if he would do that, try to do that with you. So I'm getting mixed messages all over the place. But the one that's coming through loudest and clearest is that there's something wrong with me. That I didn't just do a bad thing, that I am inherently bad. They don't love me. I make them sick. And I basically have no right to exist. I really, really don't belong anywhere, certainly not with them. When somebody says, get away from me, get out of my sight, the sight of you makes me sick. They're telling you, they were telling me that I wasn't worthy to be in their presence. I wasn't worthy to be in a family. I wasn't worthy to have a home in a warm bed, or as warm as it can be in an uninsulated house. That I didn't deserve any of the resources that I had had in my life up until this point. And when I went to bed that night, I cried almost all night long, because I did not know if the next day I was going to be, told, get your, here's a brown paper bag, put your clothing in it and get to the car because we're getting rid of you. I really truly believed that that was going to happen. Why? I'd already seen it happen. I had already seen exactly that happen. You can take what, clothing you can fit in this bag and get out. That they did to their oldest child. And so that is how my parents found out that Lynn had a boyfriend. I made the silly mistake of thinking she dropped me off in the van. She's going to come back with the van, right? No, she took the little butterscotch colored Ford Pinto, came and picked me up. And I relived that trauma again and again and again and again for years. And what happened with me was I was so hurt by them. I found them to be so abhorrent and vile towards me that my little teenage self decided, well, they don't love me, but Matthew Rutecki does love me because he's told me so many times, and I believe him. I'm not letting go of him. I'm just taking this whole relationship underground. That's all that's going to happen. And they're going to ask me, you're not seeing him anymore, are you? And I'm going to go, nope. Turned me into a world-class Olympic level liar to protect myself from abuse. And I was running away from parental abuse straight into the arms of an emotional, psychological, sexual abuser. That is precisely what happened. And so for now, I'm gonna leave this story there. And I'm going to just make a few positive statements, some meditative and reaffirming statements for me that will help me to heal from that experience. It's very, very simple to do. So I'll show you how I do it. I was a 13-year-old girl who got into this when I was 12. And because I was so hungry for love and care and acceptance and attention and approval and for love, and I already said love, but I mean it, I was starving for love. That I believed that this was me taking care of myself and meeting my own needs while I'm away from the house. I believed that I was doing something with my own autonomous decisions that was what I needed, which was being in that relationship with Matt. I can see now the level of manipulation and control and exploitation that Matthew had, and that I just couldn't detect it. And when I did get mild hints of it, I just batted it away. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to have to accept that. So I ignored it. But there were many parts of it that I literally just didn't see. It was too complex for me, and I didn't have the skills to be able to name it and to be able to identify or to comprehend in a very clear and defined way what was happening to me and what I was submitting to, what I was allowing to be done to myself. This sort of thing happens when a child is underloved. So I believe that with all my heart. A child is much more prone to being exposed to this type of abuse when they're underloved in their developing years. This is clearly an attachment trauma and developmental trauma issue. If I did not have such unhealthy attachment to my parents, I would have had a much more defined and healthy ability to engage in healthy attachment to others. I would have been able to engage in healthy interactions and healthy relationships with others. But I had been so injured. I had been so emotionally, physically, and verbally, psychologically beaten up and spiritually beaten up in my environment and also by my environment, that the truth is I just wasn't given the growth and the skills and the knowledge that a parent's responsibility included. A parent's dropped the ball on their responsibility to teach me about healthy love and healthy relationships. They could have modeled healthy love to their children, but they didn't. So there's, you can say that there was no model, there was no rubric to follow. It's sort of like being put out to sea in a holey bottomed boat with no sextant, no compass, and your oars are plastic drinking straws with dead leaves taped to the bottom, to the ends. You're supposed to row your leaky boat with that. And you can't see land, you can't see shore anywhere, and you can't see lights. Nothing to guide you. Just what it felt like to me, to be raised by these people. And then get to the age where I'm starting to practice at dating, getting ready to do real dating. And it's not going very well because there's abuse factors all around. So I do not hold myself fully responsible for what I got into, because I can clearly see that the adults let me down. It did not give me what I needed to be prepared in a healthy way to be the age that I was in the environment that I was in, experiencing the things that I experienced. They did not give me an optimal, healthy, committed, foundational relationship with my parents and my family to be sort of the jumping off point for being able to relate in a healthy way with people my own age, with anyone essentially in the world. And so I have compassion for myself. Doing this project is my curiosity about this. We heal our trauma when we become curious about what we've experienced and what we've been through and what's been done to us and what were the motives and what could have been done different, what would have been ideal compared to what we received, and whose responsibility was it to see that things had been healthy, reliably good, trustworthy, supportive, all those things. When we become very curious, and then we can take the observer look at it, and get up in the sky in the helicopter and look down at all the players and be very honest about what they're all doing and perhaps what motives they have for what they're doing. When we can take that stepped back a few paces look, or from looking at it from above, and as I like to say, I'm looking down on this field of players and I am throwing flags everywhere. There's all kinds of plays that are going on that field that are absolutely not okay. And that allows me to have that heart space out for that little girl. It allows me to hold compassion for her. It allows me to attune with her and understand what she's experiencing and what she needs. And then it always brings me around to the question, what can I do about it now? What can we do about it now? Once we get the curiosity and compassion and calmness and clarity, and we can see it now. The picture has been painted. Everything has come into focus. Everything is clear to me. I have clarity. What can I do about it now? There's so much. I can connect with myself in the healthiest ways possible. I can make a commitment to myself that I trust myself. I know what I felt. I know what was real. And anything anybody tells me that disputes that, I can dismiss it. Because I am reliable. I am trustworthy. I am capable of giving myself safety and good judgment. I do it all the time. And contrary to what I was programmed with, I can look and I can see that I am not a bad person. I am not a stupid person. I am not all of the different things that I was told with absolute cruelty that I was or that I am. I can start writing my truth. I write my truth out daily on these note cards. They're just pieces of paper, but I write my notes out daily. I'm putting pen to paper and I'm telling my story truthfully as it was. And then having that compassion for myself where I go, oh, it's so clear to me now. Lynn, this wasn't your fault. You got caught up in something that you were set up for. You were being groomed. You're being set up for this. And I was also being groomed for failure by my parents. I was being set up for this moment. They wanted that moment. They absolutely wanted that moment. They were hyper focused on that moment coming. And then when it happened, they reminded me of hyenas on a savanna taking down a deer and absolutely ripping it apart. Caribou, whatever it is, whatever, gazelle, I don't know. But I felt like I was hunted. I was trapped and set up and hunted. And they're just lying in wait for me to fuck up. And I finally did. But they were waiting for a very long time for that to happen so that they could have that moment. Just like they had with my oldest sister. That moment where they're just ripping meat together. They're just feasting on it. And I'm sorry to be so vulgar and so graphic, but that's what it feels like to me. They were laying the traps. They were waiting for us to step into them so that they could release all of this energy and emotion and disgust and disapproval so they could feel superior, so they could reaffirm for themselves that, you know, they're above reproach and everybody else is beneath them and unworthy. But I don't see myself as unworthy. I just don't. I did for a long time. But the more I looked at this situation, the more I recognized, oh, that was just their shit. That was all theirs. They came into the marriage before they even had children with all of this programmed into them and ready to go. They had a long wait for us to get to the ages where they could, you know, rain hellfire down on us for the things that we did. I can give myself what I needed then. What did I need? I asked myself, what did you need? Oh, I need a parent to hold my hand and sit with me and explain sex. I needed a parent who felt compassion for me for being in a tricky situation that I didn't fully understand. I needed an adult to tell me, well, sometimes we do things that are unsafe and we do things that aren't really the best idea for us, but we can rely on the adults in our lives to give us truthful information, accurate information, and really good guidance with support. But no matter what you do, I'll always still love you. And I'll help you any way I can so that you don't make mistakes that could harm you or derail your life. Or make you feel that you derailed your life. I needed that. I needed somebody safe and reliable and loving and compassionate who pulled me in close, listened to me, heard me, held me, and told me that they loved me and that I was a priority to them, and that my upbringing and my entry into teenagerhood was important to them, and that I wasn't going to have to do it alone, and I wasn't going to do it with being told that I was unworthy and as bad as any being could ever possibly be. No, I needed quite the opposite of that. Just a level-headed, loving, caring, compassionate, empathetic, attuned person who just said, you can come to me with anything. You can ask me any questions. I'll give you whatever information I can. And I will never, ever, ever think you are bad. So that's my work, to be that person for myself. I've been doing it for a long time now. A few years now. I have been every single day being that person for me, the person that I was longing for to partner with me so that I could grow into my adulthood in a safe, healthy, reliable way. That's the work of healing that trauma. Another thing I really, really needed was to connect with my body. I can't stress that enough. Healing from trauma comes through connection. If you come and watch my videos here on my channel on YouTube, you will see over and over and over again and hear over and over and over again. Lynn Boutier cannot stress enough, like any certified trauma recovery coach, we never let go of the idea that our healing and recovery come through connection. That's what we're reestablishing, because we now know that trauma is also known as the great disconnector. I became disconnected from my parents very early on. It's doubtful whether I even had true connection to them ever from the moment I was born. True healthy connection, healthy attachment, didn't happen. I know that it didn't happen. It's not doubtful. I know that that didn't happen. When we have developmental trauma, you bet we can have disconnection from ourselves, from our environment, and from others. So how do we reestablish that connection? Well, before we can have healthy, secure attachment in the most ideal ways to others, we need to first establish connection to self. We do that by connecting to our body, by connecting to our physicality, by paying attention to our muscles and whether or not they're tense or whether or not we're, kind of just loose and settled into our body. We do it by being able to discern whether or not I am connected to my own feelings, my emotions, and my feelings. Feelings are in the body. And we also have emotions. And so I'm practicing at naming my feelings, naming my body, sensations. I mean to say, I don't name my body. I'm saying I name my body sensations. Oh, my hands feel cold right now. Oh, my feet feel cold too. My neck feels a little bit tense. My back hurts a little bit. Oh, my bladder's full. I need to go to the bathroom. All of these things, when I settle into bed at night, I'm asking myself, where do you feel tension? Oh, I noticed you're having a little bit of right hip pain right now. What's that? What do you think that's about? I mean, I'm checking in, and it becomes routine to check in. I will give you a sentence that's really helpful with this. For those of us who have become disconnected from our sensations, disconnected from our body, disconnected from others, disconnected from our environment. One expression that I learned, which was from Abraham Hicks, was, I care how I feel. Another way that I say that is, I love it that I care how I feel. Or sometimes I'll say, caring how I feel is the most important thing to me. Caring how I feel. It's a top priority. And I deserve to care how I feel. I couldn't believe how much caring how I felt was absent. It was absent from my being. It was absent from my life. I had been trained to never do that. I had been trained to care above all else, top priority. How do they feel? The two people above me, my parents, how do they feel? And I better toe the line and make sure that they feel okay. Constant caretaking of other people's emotions. That's what we do when we're disconnected from self. We don't even let ourselves have a self. It can get that severe where we just simply deny the self in all things. Part of that was, at this age when I had this first boyfriend and I stopped eating except for, one meal in the evening each day at dinner time. I was disconnecting from self. I was denying self. I had learned to just ignore that hunger, ignore that stomach pain. Just ignore it. Just total disconnect from my physicality. So this is how we do this work. There's lots of information for us on the internet. There's tons of books that are resources for us. And I will always recommend to people that if you're going to read your first book about trauma, right there where my finger is Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. And then right here, this one is Pete Walker's book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. Is a very, very, very good book. There's a book right above my head right there. And excuse me for a moment, I have to turn. It is Trauma and Recovery, and I believe it's by Judith Herman. And that's a phenomenal book about trauma. But if you're new to trauma recovery, please hold off. Please hold off on that book until you're a little bit further along in your recovery, because that one is very intense and it is absolutely not bedtime reading. One of my she was one of my domestic violence counselors, and she gave me that book and she said, please don't promise me you will not read this book at bedtime. Because even though you're a certified trauma recovery coach now, I tell all of the people who I know are going to have that book in their hands, please do yourself the kindness of reading it just in the daytime. I don't want it disturbing your sleep. It has some very intense descriptions of trauma in it. So, and it's not for the purpose of triggering people, it's for the purpose of educating people. Some of us are very, very, very afraid of bringing harm to other people through what we put out into the world. I understand that. I understand a mental health practitioner's reluctance to speak openly about specific traumas because they can be so triggering for people. But I also believe in being extremely honest and putting the truth out there so that we can have accurate, reliable information to help people who are on their trauma recovery paths to be able to get their needs met and to have resources that are reliable and accurate for them. And that's why I decided to make this series, Monogamous at 13, because there are many, many practitioners out there who are talking about these concepts, but they're not matching it to what I call the window, the vignette that you can gaze into, where those people are there and it's almost like a little teleplay. It's like a tiny bit of theater going on where you can watch who's playing what role and who's saying the words of abuse and who is saying the words of manipulation and exploitation and control. Because some of us, that gives us a much clearer understanding than just reading on a page. This is what the definition of marginalization. This is the definition of coercive control. Well, what I spoke about today was absolutely giving you an image and what coercive control sounds like. The circumstance under which someone would be able to begin to do that to another human being. I'm showing an illustration of how it happens for a very, very clear reason. And it is so that we can connect to ourselves and recognize the ways in which we may have experienced that, so that we can name it, acknowledge it, look at it, become curious about it, hold compassion and heart space for ourselves about it. We do not have to have heart space and compassion for anyone who has harmed us, but we absolutely heal from having it for ourselves. No doubt in my mind about that. It's extremely important. So I'm hoping that my videos, as you watch them, that self-compassion will be a little bit easier for you the more you work on your own healing, because we only heal ourselves. Somebody outside of us does not heal us. It's impossible. But as we move towards our own recovery and our own healing, with each little piece of information and each new understanding and each new acknowledgement, with each new acceptance that we make that something has happened and it caused us to have a response, a relational, biological, emotional, or psychological, or neurobiological response within us. But that's the work. That's the work of trauma recovery. Why do we do it? So that we can get to the state of peace. We can get to the state of living a life that we truly love to live, free of the constraints of our trauma. Caring how we feel is everything. So for today, I will leave it there. Again, please take the very best care of yourself today that you can, with the best, most compassionate care for yourself that you could ever imagine. Because self-care is never, ever selfish. And because you're infinitely worthy of your own trauma recovery. You absolutely are. I am, and every single person is worthy of their own trauma recovery. If you would be interested in one-on-one certified trauma recovery coaching with me, Lynn Boutier, you can find me at lynnboutier.com, or you can send me an email either through the link on that website, my website, at lynnboutier.com, or you can just send an email out of your own email platform, and you can send it to lin@linboutier.com. So my email is lynn@lynnboutier.com. I answer my emails within 48 hours, most often. I try my best. And I would love to hear from you. Would love to help you on your journey towards your own trauma recovery, so that you too can live the life that you want to live, free of the constraints of your trauma. So I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Have the best day, everyone. Bye-bye.